Oh, hey guys, you've made it to the class. Welcome. You know, the biggest misconception that people have about Unreal Engine is that they think it's a program, a piece of software. Well, look around you guys. Welcome in Unreal Engine 5. And as you can see, this is not a software. This is a machine. And I'm the supervisor, the quality assurance supervisor. I have to make sure that the engine keeps running and that there's no meltdown. So I know every button, every wire, every dial, and that is why I'm here to teach you how you can get started with Unreal Engine 5 as well. So without further ado, guys, let's put on your helmet so that we're safe. And let's dive into Unreal Engine. So Unreal Engine can be found within the Epic Games Launcher right here. Then go over to Library. And from there, we can install different versions of Unreal Engine. We are going to work in 5, which is the latest. And from there, we can hit Launch to open up Unreal Engine 5. Now, you'll be prompted to start a new project, which is obvious. And we've got a few options here on the left side. We can start a new project to create a game, to do something with film and video, which is for us because this class is focused at those who want to use Unreal Engine for virtual production, filmmaking, or to make 3D animations and such. And you might be wondering, like, what's the difference between a blank project for film and for games? Well, there are so many options within Unreal Engine. I mean, just look at behind me. Way too many stuff. So that is why a blank project for games will have certain options and features enabled that are disabled for film, and the other way around. And for that reason, you want to make sure to start a new blank project for film and video. Now, on the right side here, you'll see starter content. You want to make sure to enable that. Basically, what that's going to do is just import a bunch of stuff that we can just play around with, like 3D models and such, so that we have something to work with, to experiment with. Right here, we can choose where to save the project, and I'll just save it on my desktop, and to give that a name. Let's call this one Unreal Engine Class, and hit Create. And now it's a waiting game, guys. The first time you're going to open up a new project, it's going to take time to compile all of the shaders, but that's only going to be the first time that you're opening up a new project. So I'm going to grab a coffee. Be right back.
One eternity later.
It's open. We can get started now with Unreal Engine. Don't worry, guys, this is only the first time that you open up a project. Let me just take off that stupid helmet. All right, so the way that you navigate inside Unreal Engine is like you play a game. You hold down your right mouse button and then you use the WASD keys to move around, like this, like you're playing a game. Now, if you don't like that, you can always go up to the menu, click Edit, and then choose Editor Preferences. And from there, you'll find here on the left-hand side somewhere keyboard shortcuts. And from there, you can change all the shortcuts to your likings. Now, if you've never really played games before, then this might be very weird to control your 3D environment. Well, you can also just use your mouse with the scroll wheel. You can zoom in and out. With the right mouse button, you can look around. And with the left mouse button, you can move forward and backwards, although I don't find that really convenient. Now, here on the right side, we can find two very important panels, the Outliner and the Details panel. Now, the outliner can be seen as your layers in Photoshop or in After Effects. You already have a bunch of options in here, like the floor. And if we select that, we currently have here the floor selected in our world. And on the bottom, then, you can see that the Details panel has become active. And the Details panel shows all of the options that the floor layer has, such as the locations. We can change that. We can change the rotation and all. We can change the scale and everything. I mean, these are basic properties that you should be familiar with if you've already worked in programs like Premiere or something like that. To undo any action, just like any program, Ctrl-Z will undo everything. Or we can also find here on the right-hand side the reset button for that program to bring it back to its default settings. Now, not every layer is an actual physical or digital object. It could also be something like a light source, as you can see right here. We also have a skylight, and all of these things, what they exactly do, we'll get into that later in this class. Now, here on the bottom, you can find the content drawer. We can click on it, or we can also hit Ctrl-Space to hide that or to bring it back open. If you don't like it that this panel hides itself automatically each time, you can also say here on the right side, Dock in Layout, and then it will stay there permanently. Now, what is the content browser? Well, here you collect all of the assets that you're going to work with. Every 3D model that you're going to import will be imported in here. It doesn't mean per se that you have to use it in your world. You can see it as your projects panel in Premiere or in After Effects. You just collect everything in here. And you can find back here the starter content folder. This was imported as we checked that box when we created the project. And if we double click on it, we can find a bunch of stuff. Like if we scroll down here, we should find somewhere props. And if we open that up, you can find a bunch of 3D models. We have things like chairs, we've got a bench right here, we should also have a table somewhere right there. And to insert them into our world, we simply have to drag them. So we take the chair and we just drag that into the scene. And it's gonna take a little time to also render the textures, the materials and all, and once that is done, you can see your chair here in the world. Now, if for some reason you've been dragging around these panels like this, and maybe you've closed a few things, I don't know what, and you don't know what's going on anymore, and like, what happened to my Unreal Engine? Well, no worries, you can always go here on top to Window, and from the bottom here, say Load Layout, and then click Default Editor Layout, and that will just kind of like reset everything back. So don't worry too much about that. You can also, of course, create your own custom layout, and if you then go back to Window on top, you can save that layout as a new preset. But okay, let's focus on that chair right now, because it looks so beautiful. We can select that chair, and as we do that, automatically the layer itself will be selected in the outliner. And we've seen that we can change the location and all through these options down here, but that is not so convenient. We want to use the tools, the widgets. And you can see here this little axis widget as we select it, which allows us to move it around on the X, Y, and Z axis, which is going to be more precise. We can also rotate it, and for that we take the rotate tool here on top, select that, and you can now see that the widget changes. So we can rotate that chair around. And finally, we've got a scale option as well. From here, we can scale it in the Z-axis and everything, or we can also take like the middle block, which will select all of these axes to make a uniform scaling. Now, I would highly suggest to set short keys for these options, as you'll be using these a lot. So I have these set so I can very quickly move around between these different options. And you kind of like notice that your model is kind of like snapping to some sort of a grid. Well, that are the options here to the right. We've got a position grid, we've got a rotation grid, and a scaling grid. And we can choose how big that grid needs to be. For example, we can set that to 50. And now if I'm going to move this object, you'll see that it will snap like in way bigger steps. We can make those steps smaller, again, by clicking on a 50 now and setting it to 1, which is very small. And now it will snap to a very small grid. Or we can also make it float so that it doesn't snap by disabling this grid option right here. And now you can see that we can freely move that chair around without it being snapped to any grids. And that is the same thing for the rotation and the scaling. You can play around with these options. Okay, we've got a chair. What's next? Well, we can duplicate this chair. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. We can copy and paste that, but there's an easier way to do that, and that is simply by holding down the Alt key on your keyboard as you reposition that chair. Look at that. We have just made a duplication of it. It's that easy. All right, what I want you guys to do now is go and practice this. Move around some chairs, make some duplications, rescale them, re-rotate them. Just make a nice and cozy scene with a table and some chairs around. Practice that well, and then I'll see you guys back in the next lesson. Thanks for watching.